Please be seated. Good of you to get here, you guys. Guess it wasn't quite the challenge we thought, but nevertheless, you get brownie points for getting yourself here. I want to start by going back. I don't think I've ever told this story, not a big story, but nevertheless, when my daughter was not much older than George, our baptismal candidate this morning, she might have been Sophie, maybe 2, but certainly small and tender and precious and all that good stuff. And I had to take her for one of her first shots. And I thought, oh, how can I do this as a parent? But I knew it had to be done. And I took her, and when the time came, she was on my lap. And I thought, if I'm just holding on to her and maybe holding her hand, maybe that would make all the difference. And it did. I must say that when the shot came, and there was a little bit of a pinch, but she didn't melt down, and I will always remember it, and I am grateful that I had that not opportunity, but sort of the ability, the capacity to be with her, to hold her, so that this thing that was going to happen to her wasn't going to cause her to be, may I say, dispirited. And so that term, being dispirited, we all have within us. I think because, this is me kind of getting off on a thing here, but the loss of innocence is always, I found, fascinating in terms of how it is that happens to us and what we do about it. And when I think about my daughter about to be, this wonderful, innocent little child who's about to get, kind of nailed for the first time, would that cause her to sort of lose her spirit, to kind of change who she was? Like, oh my gosh, the world is no longer trustworthy. And I didn't want that to happen. I didn't want her innocence taken away from her. And I always think of Holden Caulfield in Catcher the Rye, and how he was moving through life and as an adolescent and pretty much had lost heart, really, as I see it. He really was despondent, and he'd grown cynical, and he didn't want to move forward with his life. He was really, I think, missing his time of innocence. And that was so reflected back to him with the little sister. If you remember the story, Phoebe. Phoebe is this precocious little 10-year-old, and she's bright, and she's still innocent and cheerful. And there's something about his relationship to Phoebe that gives him a little hope for the future. But the story for me captures, again, and as you may know, Catcher in the Rye, she asked, Holden, what are you going to do with your life? What are you going to do when you grow up? And he kind of has a moment of like, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a catcher in the rye. And I'm going to, well, kids are out there playing ball, totally innocent, unaware of the edge. I'm going to be there to catch them so I can protect them so they won't lose their innocence. So the story is powerful in many ways, but in part it's that there's this desire, best we can, to say, no. What can we do to preserve the innocence of George and all the little ones around us? You can't. You can't. And it's not such a bad thing. And I think recently Richard Rohr was referenced, I think, Carl Jung, about how many of Jung's patients were twisted in all sorts of unfortunate ways because they refused to accept the kind of natural, necessary bits of suffering that life entails. Somehow we come into this world thinking, I should be able to get through this without getting hurt. No, there are things that happen, but the trick is, can we say yes to the things that are tough on us and not be dispirited? So how do we maintain this sense of spirit? And for me, that's what baptism, every time a baptism comes around, I'm pretty confident to say this is what we're not doing. We're not taking a child who's come into the world tainted and is destined for hell unless we get him in here in a hurry and cleanse that poor soul. That's not what we're doing. So what are we doing? I love this image. Call it figurative, but I think there's some powerful, beautiful truth in the heavens being torn open. So think of the world in which we live as sort of this closed system, and we all have a longing for transcendence. So what does that mean? A longing to kind of poke a hole in this seemingly closed universe and feel something more come to us, and know that whatever that's coming to us is kind of lights up our soul and lights up our spirit, and it happens. We know it's out there and it touches our soul, and we're always different, and sort of we get a boost anytime that happens. And so this story, by the way, he's 30, right? Where's he been? We don't know a thing about Jesus until this moment, because this moment is so significant that when the heavens are torn open and this love, find the language, love, this grace, this light comes down and is in the world, touching each and every one of us, but not of the world. And when you are part of that, you're part of something that will last forever. And so there's this blessing. This is my beloved with whom I am well pleased. From that moment, there's this spirit that fills Jesus that gives him what he needs. Now I'm thinking about the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu in their book, Joy. Here are two men who've been through hard stuff personally, and they've witnessed so much that how could they not be dispirited and depressed? But you look at them, you see their eyes, you feel their presence. They are quietly, profoundly, resiliently joyful people. And in the book that they've done together, there's this one line that, I love to catch the little lines and see if I can remember them and put them in my back pocket. And this one is, we can go through this life and face hardship without becoming hard. And we can go through this life and have our hearts broken and not ourselves become broken. So how do you do that? How is that possible? And I say that when I'm fearing that Sophie, after a shot, is somehow going to be fundamentally changed, maybe there's something to be said about that, that when hardship comes our way, what do? We protect ourselves. We shut the door. I'm going to pull back. It's not safe. I'm going to pull back, and I'm not sure if I'm ever going to come back into the game. I'm going to pull back, but know that experience of being sort of dispirited and depressed is not that somehow the spirit within us that we were born, George is full of it right now, that it didn't just sort of disappear. It's still all around us. And so the trick is, can I find the wherewithal to, every time I get hurt, the phrase, love as though you've never been hurt before, that can I find it within me to open up my heart again, to open up the door. All these doors are slamming on me, and that's real. You lose people, you lose jobs. There's all sorts of things that are part of being alive. But we can choose at any moment to throw open the door. And this voice, I've never heard it so vividly before as I was thinking about this, that this is a cheerful voice. We hear, it's a voice from heaven came down and this is but I want to hear it as like, whoa, yay, and I love you, and I'm proud of you, and I believe in you, and I've always been with you, and I always will be with you right to the end. And that's the spirit that is all around us. And if we crack open that door and have even when innocence is gone, they talk about, and I'll end with this, I promise, that it was Marcus Borg, another favorite of mine, who might not have been original with him. Actually, I think Paul Ricoeur, it was the philosopher who spoke about second naivete, that we are all born with a kind of open heart innocence. We get hurt, and so we pull back, we lose our innocence. Sadly, most of us never get out of that place, and it's up to us. Second naivete is possible. It's saying, okay, I know I can get hurt, but I'm not going to stay withdrawn, because that's no way to live. So open up the door and allow that spirit to give you a boost and move you forward. We spend so much time saying, what do I have and what have I lost, thinking that this is who we are. Who we are is this spirit that is always being welcomed to take another step and feel that spirit behind you pushing you along. And now that this is Epiphany and we talk about light, and I love David Brooks referring to us as illuminators, And yes, there are diminishers, but let us be illuminators where this spirit, this love, this grace, this life can come through you. We don't own it, but we have the privilege of sending it through and zeroing in on whoever's in our life and just go, wah, throw that beam on them. And that's why the story of Jesus takes off from here. All those miracles happened because he knew he was so fully loved, he was liberated not to have to think about himself, but to direct everything outward to the person who's right there in need of help. And that light shines on them, and they light up, and the transformations happen, and a new life. Go, your faith has made you well. Yeah. Is there anything, really, that we can't face? Anything that we can't face if we know, literally or figuratively, that someone's holding our hand. And that's there. I think it was Rilke who said, you know, the voice of God speaks to us as he sends us into the world. It's a beautiful poem. And right at the end of it, God is saying, go out there, let everything happen to you. Just keep going, but don't lose touch with me. Take my hand. You'll know the world up ahead because it lacks humor. He says, it takes it so seriously. But take my hand and go in there and be full of spirit. So that's what baptism for me today is about. That George, we've got two, and we almost had two this morning, but where's George? All right, he's there still. He hasn't gone anywhere. So in a moment here, we're going to, good, he's reading the Bible. Oh my gosh. It's a miracle. No, I'm glad, yeah. So we're gonna have that big wet kiss come down on George. And godparents, final word, there's nothing more, think of Holden maybe, there's nothing more that no more precious gift that you, Christopher and Catherine, can give George than modeling that. No matter what you're dealing with, to have the willingness to open that door, call the Spirit, and keep going. That shows courage, that shows faith, and you won't burn out. If you want to just kind of bear it and, go down, and it's not that. It's opening and being light. That's how that joy that we see in the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu, they keep moving down that path. There's no burnout with them. Just open up, let that happen, and keep moving along, and George will go, ooh, I like these people. And they'll see you as real and authentic, too. All right, enough said. Peace be with you.